Lexie Natasha tweeted and was just saying a bunch about pride and how proud she was of this team. Have you kind of had similar emotions the last couple days, and how do you balance that with a very painful ending to the season?
Yeah.
Nobody in the BA or WWE anticipated that. A player who barely made it through her first 2 seasons. Her roster spot, questioning each shot she made and secretly speculating that this would be the day she was cut. Then, practically instantly, everything changed. Lexie Hull not only survived the most significant change in, she turned become one of the most intriguing tales in women's basketball history. Now, after years of residing within the Caitlin Clark Hurricane's eye, she has at last revealed what it has truly been like. Not the polished media version, but the genuine one. And no one completely anticipated what she disclosed. Prior to all of this making sense, you must comprehend where Lexie Hull was prior to Caitlin Clark ever entering the doors at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Indiana Fever selected Hull 6th overall in the 2022 draft. On paper, that sounds like a fantasy. Top 10 pick. 6th overall pick. A Stanford product who had won a national championship. Been selected for the All-Pac-12 3 times. And in her senior year, she won both the Class Award and the Elite 90 Award. Season for academic and athletic success. This was meant to be the starting point. Instead, it turned into a grind that most outsiders never really noticed. Because the Fever in those early years weren't excellent. They weren't even close to being good. They were among the league's poorest teams. They went through losing seasons and completely missing the playoffs. However, Hull was put in a predicament that no young athlete wants to be in, competing non-stop to remain on the roster. Every night was important. Every possession was significant in an unhealthy manner. She was playing fearfully, and she was aware of it. In her first 2 seasons, she averaged less than 5 points per game. Despite playing for more than 20 minutes every night in her second year, she only scored 4.6 points. The statistics don't lie. Hull would subsequently identify the precise issue that was preventing her from moving forward. In her own words, she spoke candidly about those formative years, something that very few athletes are ever willing to do in public. There were times when I started that it was like, if I shoot, it needs to go in, she told Glamour magazine. Because if I don't, I could be benched or cut. Read it again. So a Stanford graduate, a top 10 draft pick, someone with exceptional qualifications, lying awake with a sincere fear that her career could be ended by a single missed shot. Playing on a losing team with nothing to soften the blow was that truth. There were genuine nerves. She acknowledged that during those initial years, there was a losing mentality, no playoffs, and little room for error. Every small detail was important because the strain didn't only affect your shot, it also affected your mind. The stakes felt unachievable. Hull was suffocating under it. It alters how you move, think, and breathe on the court. And no one outside was observing the Fever closely enough to notice it. However, something changed after that. Not only Lexie Hull's career but also the team's overall trajectory and possibly the whole women's basketball scene. In America, the Indiana Fever selected Caitlin Clark with the first pick in the 2024 WNBA draft. Overall choice. This is a brief summary of Caitlin Clark's persona at the time. The most decorated scorer in NCAA basketball history, male or female. A player who had independently made Big Ten women's basketball a must-watch event, breaking decades-old records. She had made Iowa Hawkeyes games into national television events and sellouts. She was entering the WNBA with an unprecedented amount of attention for a female basketball player, and the league as a whole was about to determine whether the hoopla was genuine. It was. Her first season produced record-breaking fan interaction and output. That instantly solidified her place as the league's most significant player. And overnight, the Indiana Fever emerged as the WNBA's most popular, controversial, talked about, and watched team. Everywhere they went, there was a media frenzy, sold-out audiences, and national broadcasts. When Caitlin Clark slipped on that Indiana Fever jersey, everything came together. And Lexie Hull had a front-row seat to every minute of it. This is what no one actually discusses when talking about the Caitlin Clark's impact on her colleagues. It wasn't just the prominence. It wasn't simply the larger audiences or the sponsorship agreements or the cameras that followed them about. For Lexie Hull, the most significant shift was something that occurs inside the lines throughout a game. Unless you know what you're looking for, it's nearly unnoticeable. Caitlin Clark's court vision is exceptional, and she has a different perspective on the floor than nearly everyone who has ever played this game. Her passing is exceptional, and coaches are inspired by the way she draws defenders to her. Wide-open perimeter shooters with nothing standing in their way. For someone like Lexie Hull, that was nothing short of freeing for someone who had tortured herself over each shot attempt for 2 years. When you consider what preceded the change, Hull's description of it strikes a different chord. After Clark arrived, I know I'm going to have open shots, but I don't need to worry about whether they go in or they don't, because I've worked hard to prepare myself for this, and I'll accept the result. That's more than simply self-assurance. That's liberation. It's the kind of freedom that only materializes when the pressure valve is finally opened. And the statistics supported it. In 2024, Hull's three-point shooting percentage was 47.1%, a career high that held as one of the league's most effective shooting outings that season. Without Clark's death generating. After those looks, her three-point shooting percentage returned to 36.7%, which was exactly where it had been during her collegiate career. Even more so than words, the data conveys the story. However, the change wasn't limited to the court. This is where the narrative becomes even more intriguing. It's because of what Lexie Hull and Caitlin Clark developed off the court. Became one of the most talked about friendships in women's sports, sparked controversy, and made headlines. Fans genuinely wondered how Clark would adapt to a packed locker room once she was drafted. Of strangers, she was surrounded by her closest friends during her 4 years at Iowa. Kate Martin, Gabby Marshall, players she had grown up playing with. She was the team's new face when she arrived in Indiana. The worry was genuine. Would she fit in a place where everyone else had already formed bonds? Would the current players welcome her or be offended by her attention? This is what really took place. Nearly instantly, she and Lexie Hull fell in love. By the end of that first season, they were hanging out in Indianapolis away from the court. They were sharing content on TikTok. They went on a trip to Mexico, experimenting with various beverages and laughing as if they had been friends for years. Fans loved their chemistry, which was evident throughout the WNBA's Olympic hiatus. However, in 2025, and the dynamic grew to the point where it was given a completely new name. Sophie Cunningham was traded to Indiana in the upcoming off-season of the 2025 season, turning what had been a partnership into a trio. The three of them, Clark, Hull, and Cunningham, began referring to themselves as the Trace Leches, and the material they produced together turned into some of the greatest. Shared, the league's most hilarious content. Hull and Cunningham were Clark's famous caddies at an LPGA Pro-Am event. They were always teasing each other on social media. When Clark shared Fever Media, Hull responded by making fun of Clark's lack of sun exposure in daytime Instagram photographs with the message, "We are so back." In one of the most amusing statements of the offseason, Clark told People magazine that he probably could use a little sun. Additionally, it was the kind of taunting that only occurs in friendships when both parties are truly at ease with one another. Additionally, it provided the WNBA fanbase with something they had never truly had before, an intimate glimpse into the personalities behind the players. Hull also stated that Clark will attend her wedding, which has been planned. Phases since Hull and Will Matheson, a former Pittsburgh Pirates player, became engaged in April 2025. The two first connected at Stanford, where Matheson excelled in baseball before being selected in the 6th round of the 2019 MLB draft. He now resides in Indianapolis after retiring from baseball due to a string of injuries. Having moved to be near Hull, which is a detail that perfectly captures the essence of her life. However, despite how pleasant and enjoyable everything has been, Hull decided to play alongside Caitlin Clark, to confront directly in a manner that the majority of individuals in her position would have ignored or completely avoided. And it's the aspect of this tale that merits the greatest focus. The 2025 WNBA season was among the league's most chaotic. Had not seen in years. Clark arrived with what Hull called a distinct atmosphere, a seriousness, a focus. An advantage that showed she was finished adjusting and prepared to rule. Hull informed reporters prior to the season that Clark was clearly different going into year 2. There is this new air about. Hull remarked, that she's here and she's ready to take care of business. And early on, that read looked dead accurate. Hull herself was playing the best basketball of her career throughout the first 7 games of 2025, leading the WNBA in three-point percentage at 55.6% and scoring more than 10 points each game. Then the injuries began. Clark sustained a quad strain. The Fever appeared to be a team that was finally coming together. That kept her out of several games. Then she had a groin problem. Then she had another soft tissue issue. By July 15th, when Clark fell during a game against the Connecticut team for the 4th time in just a few months. One of the most devastating moments of the season was witnessing Sun on the sidelines. Clark left the court, sat on the bench with a towel covering her face, pressed her forehead against the basket stanchion, and appeared to be fighting back tears after giving it all and seeing it come apart. And sitting next to her, the way a true friend does when. Lexie Hull said, "Words aren't enough." Later on, Hull talked candidly about Clark's head position during that period. The aggravation of putting in more effort than anyone else in the building and still having her body refuse to cooperate. To work together. It was a challenging chapter. Nevertheless, even though Clark was out for a large portion of the season, they persevered all the way to the WNBA semifinals, where they eventually won the championship. Champion Las Vegas Aces to a decisive Game 5 that required overtime before Indiana was ultimately defeated. Hull played a major role in making the run feasible by providing the kind of two-way grit that doesn't appear in a box score. Taking charges, protecting the top perimeter scorer on the other team each and every night. Making plays that kept games close when it mattered most to the squad. And she was processing something all along. Issues she ultimately concluded the public should be aware of. The Glamour magazine Women of the Year feature. When it was released in October 2025, Lexie Hull decided to stop using caution when she spoke. Along with Nafissa Collier, Jonquil Jones, and the Sabali sisters, she was one of 5 players highlighted in the issue. An appropriate award for someone who has quietly emerged as one of the league's most esteemed players. However, her engagement, wardrobe, or basketball statistics weren't the parts of that interview that went viral. It was about the negative aspects of being on the same team as the most well-known female athlete. Hull put it bluntly. Because of the media attention, I believe there is some jealousy over the Fever. All the supporters who have supported us ever since Caitlin arrived. That would have been plenty on its own to make headlines, but she went on to explain that the Fever has heard what other teams are saying. Not conjecture, not rumors from the outside. Hull claimed to have heard teams and players in the opposite locker room. Rooms stating that they cannot allow the Fever to triumph. And the goal is genuine. The additional incentive that each squad delivers when they play Indiana. It is real, and Hull has been at the center of it ever since. When Clark arrived, what she decided to do with it is what makes her reaction to everything so intriguing. She didn't whine. She didn't act like a victim. She leaned into it. If you have additional desire to defeat us because of whatever out of our hands, that's okay, Hull remarked. If that's what it takes for you guys to come and work extra hard, fantastic. Everyone ought to feel as though they're getting everyone else's best. I really believe that we get everyone other people's best. That is a really calm way to deal with being in the middle of one of the most contentious circumstances. In women's athletics, it's true that Caitlin Clark attracts more attention than just fans and photographers. And endorsement agreements. Opponents mark every Indiana game like a playoff game on the calendar. Referees are scrutinized. Every action taken by a Fever player is examined, clipped, debated, contested, and used as a weapon by those who have never entered a professional. Lexie Hull has spent the last 2 years living within the basketball facility, so she has inside knowledge of it, in a manner that no outsider could really comprehend. And when she ultimately made the decision to tell her truth, she did so with the kind of clarity that breaks through the clutter. When you consider the entire trajectory of what Lexie Hull has gone through, she entered the league as a gifted player on a bad squad, enduring seasons where every shot seemed to have life-or-death implications. Her job was unclear. Her confidence was shattered. She had virtually no influence over the collapsing franchise on which she had staked her career. Then everything changed when the most disruptive force in women's basketball history appeared. The fans, the culture, the direction of the team, and even Hull's self-perception as a player. And rather than disappearing into the background or being engulfed by everything, she emerged as one of the main figures in the WNBA's most captivating narrative. The camaraderie, the moments on social media, the collaboration on the court, the sincere glamour interview, the poignant sideline scenes, etc., have all turned Lexie Hull into something she never was in those hard early years. A household name. Her three-point shooting made her dangerous. Her defense made her indispensable. However, her readiness to be honest about what it means to be in. For those who follow this league regularly, Caitlin Clark's world made her extremely captivating. The question that hangs over everything. For the first time in her career, Hull entered the offseason as a restricted free agent. It alters the calculus in ways that even she admitted she couldn't entirely foresee. She has established a life in Indianapolis. In order to be near her, her fiancé moved. She has expressed her love for the series, the fans. Adoring all Indiana has developed into. However, the professional sports industry does not always give a damn about feeling. Additionally, the WNBA's collective negotiation crisis has created additional levels of uncertainty that no one in the league can successfully traverse at this time. The Fever has the capacity to match any offer she gets, and considering everything she brought, it is anticipated that Indiana will make every effort to retain her when she comes to the table in 2025. Caitlin Clark openly posted an Instagram picture of the two of them with just 3 letters as a